Hello, welcome again to another Isadora video tutorial. This video is the first in a short series looking at camera tracking. So using your live video input to do stuff. Essentially, this is going to be looking at ways to create interactive interfaces. When we think of camera tracking, we might think about where something is, but I want to think a bit broader than that. It's essentially using your camera as a source of data that you can then apply to something else. And the great thing is with Isadora, even just with the built-in webcam, you can do quite a lot of stuff very, very quickly. So hopefully, spend 10 minutes going through this, you'll feel like you have the back end for an interactive system. So I tend to break this approach to camera tracking down into sort of 5 stages. So the first is thinking about the input. So the input in this case is going to be my webcam. So it might be the type of camera, but it's also thinking about where it's placed, what it's looking at. The second stage is the filter. That's how you treat that image coming through. So we might apply effects to brighten or darken the image, or look for treat the image in a way that enhances certain colors or gets rid of colors. So that gives us an image that we can then start to take data from. So that third stage is measuring. So how do we extract the data from that image? What kind of data is it? Then stage 4, we will calibrate that. We're thinking about actually how do we filter out the stuff we don't need? How do we scale down to just the useful section of data that we want? And how do we potentially scale up or down? How do we apply that then to the output? So that's the 5th stage, is the output. What we're going to do with that. Are we going to take someone moving in front of the camera and have that be like some kind of volume control, or is it going to make another object move as well? So those are the 5 stages that I will refer to throughout these videos. That's just my model. There may be others. So let's jump in. First thing I'm going to need to do obviously is turn on my camera. So I'm going to go to Input and Live Capture Settings. I've already turned mine on here. You can see I'm just using my webcam. And I've got it set to a low resolution. Again, performance in this case is particularly important, more than the actual image quality, because I'm not going to be using my webcam as a source of. I'm not going to be sending that to the stage. I'm just going to be using it to generate my data, really. So let's get that in there. First of all, let's get a video in watcher and a projector. I'm going to hook them up just so you can see what my webcam is seeing. So it's not the greatest quality, but I can't do anything about this. It's going to have to be enough. So input is the webcam. Let's put a filter in there, and the filter that we're going to use for this session is going to be the difference, because for this session I want to use movement as the data that we're collecting, and not just position. We're not interested in position just today. It's looking at the amount of movement. So we're going to keep it super simple. And what difference does as an actor is it highlights the changes between frames as they come in. So you can see when I move my hand, there's a sort of outline of my hand. When I'm still, I disappear, because there are no changes between frames. If I blink my eyes, they go white. So the more I move, the brighter the image. So this is, well, it's a nice visual effect anyway, but we're not using it as a visual effect directly. We're using it as a way to highlight movement. So we're visualizing those changes between frames. So in this case, movement equals brightness. So if we can measure the brightness somehow, therefore we will be measuring the amount of movement. There is a way to do that. How do we calculate the brightness? Well, there is a tool called Calc Brightness. So I'm going to stick this here. You'll notice it has a video input and it has a brightness output. So we're using this purely to measure the video feed. So I'm going to stick this in here and you'll see it start generating numbers already. And if I'm still, we're looking at 0.3, still some sort of residual activity. But if I move and wave my hand, what we're getting up to? 6. Yeah, about 6. Ooh, I think I saw a 9 then. So essentially, the more I move, the higher the number. It's not a big range, but it is enough and it's useful. Okay. The fourth stage then is to calibrate that number. So we're going to do two things. We're going to calibrate the input. We're going to use that small range and extend that out over a bigger range. And we're going to smooth it out as well. So let's get the limit scale value actor first. I'm going to take this number coming out of the brightness and plug it in this bottom input here, the value. So at the minute we're scaling 0 to 100 to 0 to 100. But since, if I really move my hand, oh, I nearly got to 10 then. Okay, I'm gonna stick this to about 7 and see how we go. I'll change that because that's what calibration is. It's trying something, tightening it up, trying it again. Calibration is just trying to balance things so you get the maximum output, and you know, so when we move, it feels like it's having the effect we desire. And we're going to stick with 0 to 100 for now. We'll notice as well these numbers jump around a lot. We're going to smooth that out a little bit. I mean, it might not be so noticeable, but it would be if we were visualizing it. So actually, no, I'm going to stick this in. I might take it out later to smooth it, to demonstrate. So there we have the smoother, and what this does is it averages the numbers coming in over a period of time. It's set to 0.2 by default. The magic number, I've been told, and in my experience it bears out to be true, is 0.7. Okay, so essentially you can see the numbers on the left changing more than the numbers on the right. And finally, let's find an output. Now this is the fun bit. I'm not going to do anything too conceptual. I just want to demonstrate the mechanics, but what I will say is that actually this is really where it comes to life, is the idea. You know, it's all right having the back end, but the context and the idea that you bring to it, that's the really important part. But for now, I just want to demonstrate mechanics, and hopefully you get a sense of that. So I've got my notes here. I'm going to get a shape actor out. And the first thing I'll do is, oh, I need a projector. And let's give this shape, let's make it a green square with a red outline, oh no, a blue outline. Okay. And I'm going to attach the smoothing value to the scale. So it's shrunk immediately, but also now it is moving. When I move, it's moving. If I move more, it gets bigger. So already something is happening. So we're taking into account the range of my movement and we're applying it from 0 to 100. let's make sure that square gets a little bit bigger. Let's set this to 200. So now the same movement makes the square twice as big. Equally, I could say the square is never going to be smaller than 25. So when I'm totally still, it's still there. When I move, it gets big. You can see then, if I just demonstrate the calibration again, if I set this back to 100, I could move all I want. I'm never generating a number big enough to really shift that square. That's why by setting the max to the maximum brightness that I'm generating, let's say 7, or actually no, let's go 5. The lower we bring that max down, the more sensitive it is. So in fact, let's try 2. So we can see even with my finger just moving, ooh, it's really sensitive. So calibration is about sensitivity, and it's thinking about, well, what kind of action do you want to create? What kind of interaction do you want to create? This point itself as well is really important and powerful for when you're thinking about people, audiences, performers with different levels of mobility, or thinking about performances in different contexts and interactive installations. Are you asking the user to move their whole body across a stage, or are you just asking them to wiggle their finger? Depending on what you're trying to achieve, you can calibrate it to that so it feels like they're having the right relationship and effect. So that is the square, or applying, well, that is applying it to the shape actor on the scale. The last thing I want to point out before I unhook this shape is we can see I've got my shadow, as it were, in the background. So that's fine. I'm using that actually just to demonstrate how this is working. So you can see an image of me moving when I move. But for the actual final presentation of such an interface, I wouldn't necessarily want the user to see themselves. I'd want them to focus on the shape. So I'm just going to unhook this for now, just to make the point that actually the thing we're engaging with is this abstract shape. We've got to make that link. We're not seeing ourselves, we're seeing the shape move, and we're making that connection between ourselves. One more thing I can do to increase that sense of connection is add sound. So I'm gonna put a sound player in here, and I've got a little track by Tom Ray Smith. You can go to his SoundCloud here and check out his music, and if I play it, I'll just give you a preview. Okay, but now let's link that to this number as well. In fact, I'm just going to bring the max volume down here. So that creates a deeper relationship, a deeper entanglement. It reinforces that sense of interaction and feedback that the user gets. We're using the same value, it's just that as well as applying it to the scale of the shape, we're also applying it to the volume.